We had considerable difficulties with commuting because my husband had no eyesight and therefore couldn't see. So, we needed a car, but also a driver for it. Eventually, we hired a driver who lived with us. Wherever we had to go, he always accompanied us. This driver kept giving me signals through the rearview mirror, and I constantly signaled back to him as well. The driver was extremely handsome, and I was not any less attractive. In fact, I was also very beautiful. When someone saw me for the first time, they wanted to have me immediately. The driver felt the same way. Initially, I wasn't interested in him. I thought I would just take him along for a few days, but after a few days, I started paying attention to him because he often gestured in the mirror. One day, when we came home, I told him that he could only stay in our house because there were 2 or 3 empty rooms. He agreed and began living in our home. Before, whenever he wasn't around, we would call him, which took a lot of time. Whenever we needed to go somewhere, we informed him immediately, and he took us there right away. One evening, when I went to the driver's room to bring him food, he said, "Come to me at 10 p.m., I want to talk to you about something. When your husband is asleep, please come." I said, "I'll try." When my husband went to the driver's room at 10 p.m., I was wearing a black nightgown in which everything was visible. As I went, his eyes widened. I sat on the driver's bed, he placed his hand on mine, and said, "You are very beautiful." I laughed and nodded, and the driver understood that he now had permission. He said, "I know you need it too because your husband can't do anything." Then, without losing time, he told all his friends. "My name is Priya, and we live in a small village. I am 22 years old. In our family, I have my mother, father, younger brother, and a sister. We lived a very happy life. Now that I reached the age of marriage, my family started looking for a match for me. The boy was in the army, and his salary was good. After the marriage, I went to my in-laws' house, where my mother-in-law, father-in-law, younger brother-in-law, and husband lived. The house was very beautiful, nothing was lacking. My husband was on leave for 3 months, and it didn't take long before, 3 months later, he went back to work. Earlier, after I finished all the housework, I had time, and it was difficult for me to pass the time because I was newly married. One day, my brother-in-law came into my room and asked, "Barbie, why are you sitting here alone? Talk to us or do something. We can play carambola or watch TV." I replied to Ravi that I wasn't interested in anything, and over time, I would get used to things because I was still new here. Another day, I told my mother-in-law, "Mama, I would really like to go there, stay for 4 to 5 days, and then come back." My mother-in-law said I should go by car with Ravi. I said, "Okay." The next day, we went to my parents' house. Ravi dropped me off and immediately turned back. I told him to wait, but he didn't want to drink tea or water. He said he had an important task to complete. So, I stayed at my parents' house for 3 days. I told Mama that I definitely wanted to go back to my in-laws' house today. Mama said, "Daughter, wait a few more days," but I insisted and said, "No, Mama, I feel really strange." So, I got on the bus and returned to my in-laws' house. There, I asked Ravi, "Ravi, is everything really okay at home?" He replied, "Yes, Barbie, everything is fine." I said, "Thank God everything is good." Friends, my brother-in-law had a Canadian visa and traveled to Canada. One night, only I and my in-laws were home. My father-in-law had a heart attack, and we took him to the hospital. He passed away on the way, leaving this world. One day, I received a call from the army camp, and they asked if I was speaking with Ranwi's house. I said, "Yes." Then they told me that Ranwi had sustained a head injury during training and, due to the injury, had lost his eyesight. When I heard this, I started crying loudly. My mother-in-law asked what happened, "Daughter," but I couldn't tell her and just kept crying. Then, when they found out, she fainted. My mother-in-law never regained consciousness, and I didn't know what to do. Since no one else was around, I called the neighbor's boy, and we took her to the hospital. When we arrived at the hospital, the doctor informed us that her breathing had stopped and she had gone into a coma. 2 days later, she also left this world. Now, I was left alone at home. I called my husband, and he said that he would come back immediately. I have a pension now because I can't work since I lost my eyesight. Whatever money I receive, I'll manage it. Back then, my husband came to me, and I took good care of him. My husband used to earn well, but whenever we had to go somewhere, we had significant problems. We bought a car, but now we needed a driver who could drive it for us, so we hired one. Because my husband's pension was good and we had a decent income, whatever money we earned, we deposited it in the bank and earned interest from it. Our driver was very handsome, smart, tall, broad, and very young. Whenever we needed to go somewhere, we would call him, and he came. One day, we had to go to our parents' house to meet them. We called the driver, and he came shortly after. Then, we got into the car and left. The driver looked at me through the rearview mirror, but at that moment, I didn't pay much attention to him. Suddenly, my gaze fell on him, and he looked at me with very intense eyes. My husband had weak eyesight, he wore glasses and couldn't see anything without them. The driver kept trying to give me signs because I was very beautiful. In the past, every boy would want me when he saw me, and now everyone wanted me too. Even our driver had the same desire, and slowly, I also began to feel attracted to him. We stayed at my mother's house for 2 to 3 hours. After that, I went close to the car to bring the driver tea and cold water. When I gave it to him, he touched my hand. It felt very strange, almost as if a light was flickering through my body, and I shivered. After sitting for a while, we made our way back home. On the way, the driver kept giving me signals again. Eventually, we reached home. I left my husband in the bedroom and went to the driver. I told him, if you want to stay here, you are welcome because we have to go again tomorrow to collect the pension. There are 2 or 3 empty rooms in the house where you can rest. It was quite dark, and he agreed. I fed my husband first and then gave him some food. He said, okay, put it on the bed. I placed the food on the bed, and as I was about to leave, he held my hand and said, leave only after listening to what I have to say. I said, yes, tell me. He said, you are very beautiful. How do you live with this man? I said, earlier, everything was fine, this happened only recently when he lost his eyesight. He then said, when your husband sleeps at night, you must come to me and listen. I said, whatever you want to say it now. He said, no, come at that time. That night, at 10 p.m., when my husband fell deeply asleep, I quietly went to the driver's room. I was wearing a black nightgown that made everything about my body visible. The driver lost consciousness when he saw me. He kept looking at me, and I sat on his bed. He placed his hand on mine and smiled, saying, you look really beautiful tonight. Then the driver asked if he should say something. He understood that I had given him the green light, but what could I do? After my husband lost his eyesight, he was no longer able to do anything. I was a woman, and I also had some dreams that I wanted to fulfill, which my husband couldn't. So, I took the driver's help to finally fulfill my dreams. That night, I felt incredibly happy because, after so long, I found the happiness I craved. Our relationship was now open. Whenever the opportunity arose, we enjoyed ourselves, whether it was during the day, night, or afternoon. In the evening, we didn't have to worry about anything because it didn't matter to my husband. Now, I spend most of my time with the driver since he now lives in our house. He rarely goes home because we always had to call him whenever we needed to go somewhere. Therefore, we gave him his own room, and he lived there. After 6 months, no one noticed anymore. We assumed that he would go and come back within an hour, but on that particular day, the doctor took 2 to 3 hours. I wondered why it was taking so long. We were told that he was being operated on, and we hoped that it would get better as a result. But now, it seems like it might never get better. The doctor said, you can take him home now and come back in 3 days. I said, okay. We returned home, and 3 days later, we went to the hospital again. This time, it took him only 1 hour, and then the doctor said, "There's no need to bring him to the hospital anymore, you can take him home permanently." We came home that evening. I put my husband to sleep and went to the driver's room, and we started again. Friends, what I saw that night, I hadn't even imagined in my dreams. We were together. My husband had long suspected that I was blind to everything happening right in front of me. Every time you did it right in front of my eyes, I pretended to be asleep and noticed nothing. I knew everything. I just wanted to catch you both red-handed. That's why I told the doctor the whole truth and asked him not to tell my wife that my eyesight was restored. That's why the doctor hid it from you as well. He performed a surgery that restored my eyesight. For 3 days, they kept the stitches in. You were so blinded by your love for the driver that you didn't notice a thing. He was the only driver you needed. I have no idea how many times a day you had your fun with him. I really don't know how I controlled myself. I just wanted to catch you both in the act, and I finally did today. My wife started saying that it wasn't her fault and that it was just the driver's trick. "He trapped me," she said. The driver replied, "What are you saying? Explain it clearly." My husband said, "If you both don't leave my house right now, I will kill you both. I don't even want to see your face." Then he said, "You two should never be seen in my house again." My wife fell at my feet, begging me repeatedly, but I didn't listen to her at all. I divorced my wife, and now she lives with the same driver. His parents have also cut all ties with him. Now both of them live in a rented house. Then, I told everything to my younger brother about what my sister-in-law did to me. He said, "Brother, don't worry. I'll call you to Canada too." After some time, I got a job offer and moved to Canada to join my brother. There, he introduced me to a girl, and I married her. 6 months later, I also got married. Now, we two brothers live together, work, earn, and live life on our own terms. We have no tensions with anyone. I've forgotten my old life and started a new one. Thank you, friends. I hope you liked our story. If you liked this story, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with your friends too. We'll be back soon with a new story.